What is it that makes a man strong? Is it the power of his muscles? The measure of his material resources? Is it his grit, the strength of his character, his courage, his willingness to take on the struggles of others? Or is it something even more elusive? The 1977 film Watership Down, based on the Richard Adams novel of the same name, tells the story of a group of rabbits who flee from their homes after one of them has a premonition of an impending disaster. On their journey, they will encounter all manner of threats, and all for the sake of securing a home and a free future for themselves. Watership Down is a film that feels old, and not just because it is. Even compared to other animated films from that period, say Disney's Robin Hood or The Rescuers, Watership was noticeably off the beat stylistically, but the strength that it had was not in its style. It was in the fact that it was able to hint at feelings and themes far deeper and more serious than those normally explored by the genre. It gestured towards the realities of death, suffering, and brutality, but also what enabled people, or in this case rabbits, to rise above those things. In many ways, it was a brutally realistic film. There's nothing Marvel about it, but it always maintained one eye looking towards the romantic and the mystical. One day, a pair of rabbits, Hazel and his younger brother Fiver, set off from their warren when the latter has a premonition of a great disaster coming. After trying and failing to convince the leadership of the warren to relocate, they determine that they're going to leave on their own, and a small group of others who have been convinced by Fiver come with them, including a member of the warren's Ausla, basically the soldier/police force of any warren. His name is Bigwig.
It's you'll be killed. Bigwig! Yes, you know me.
And he is a formidable fighter, bigger and stronger than any other member of the group, and Hazel, the de facto leader of the group, initially has a difficult time controlling such a headstrong member of the party. But over time, Hazel, through his courage and wisdom, wins Bigwig's complete loyalty. Later in the story, after Hazel's party establishes a home, they run into trouble from a nearby warren of militant, maybe even quasi-fascist rabbits, Efrafa. The Efrafans are led by the cunning and terrifying General Woundwort. The general is a beast of a rabbit. Bigwig has by this time pulled off a number of impressive feats of his own, but when one of the other rabbits gets a glimpse of Woundwort, they report back that they doubt if even Bigwig would be a match for him. After realizing that there are rabbits in Efrafa who would like to escape, Hazel and the others hatch a plan. Bigwig infiltrates Efrafa by convincing the general to let him join their Ausla, due to the fact that he is an impressive specimen. Afterwards, with a great deal of cunning and the help of a seagull with an accent that is apparently meant to be Norwegian,
stupid bunnies!
Guys, this movie is crazy. He succeeds in helping a group of discontented rabbits escape from the clutches of the general, but Woundwort tracks all of them back to their home on Watership Down. The Efrafans launch an offensive on Hazel's warren, one that our heroes are unlikely to survive, except for a desperate plan hatched by Hazel. After they have blocked most of the entrances against the intruders, Hazel leaves through a secret exit, telling Bigwig that he must defend the run, a tunnel within a rabbit warren, that leads to the rest of the rabbits, one of whom has just delivered babies, who are surely going to be eaten if they are captured. The general leads the assault himself. He is a terrifying adversary. Deadly, powerful, cunning, fearless. Richard Adams does an excellent job of humanizing his villain. In the book, he devotes a good chunk of the text to exploring Woundwort's backstory, showing exactly what kind of life could produce such a formidable opponent. He is no cartoon character. I mean, except for the fact that he literally is. But you never despise Woundwort, even if you know he needs to die. I said before that this movie is the anti-Marvel, and it really shows in this scene. During his time in Efrafa, Bigwig is introduced to a rabbit named Blackavar. Blackavar has been badly mutilated, his ears torn nearly to ribbons after trying to escape once from Efrafa. After his capture, he's kept out in the open as a warning to any other rabbits who are thinking of running away. When Bigwig stages his escape, he takes mercy on Blackavar and determines to take him away with the rest. In the book, Blackavar is a pretty cool character.
We'll take one or two of them with us before it's finished.
And he ends up being a very useful addition to Hazel's group. But in the movie, during the final confrontation, as the general is digging his way through the different tunnels of the warren, Blackavar hides himself so that he'll have an opportunity to get a piece of the general. The dramatic setup is all there. The abused victim getting a chance to, if not defeat his abuser, at least get a little payback. But that is not how it goes down. Blackavar is brutally killed without even scratching Woundwort. He's just immediately torn apart. I remember that this scene messed me up as a kid, and I still don't like it, especially since that doesn't happen in the book. Woundwort and Bigwig eventually meet in a tunnel where there's only room for single combat, and Bigwig, against all odds, fights Woundwort to a standstill.
I told you once I was trying to impress you. I hope I have.
Eventually, both are exhausted, but Woundwort still has time on his side. He gives Bigwig one final offer. Give up and save your life. Become a servant of Efrafa. And Bigwig, bleeding and utterly exhausted, replies,
My chiefs told me to defend this run.
Your chief?
My chief told me to defend this run, and until he says otherwise, I'm staying. It's a moment that gets me all blubbery and bleary-eyed whenever I think about it, mostly because of the general's reaction. Your chief, he gasps. Your chief. This entire time, he and all the other Efrafans had assumed that Bigwig was the chief simply because he was the biggest. As soon as Bigwig makes this statement, he doesn't even know it, but he has struck fear into the hearts of the general and all of his soldiers as they consider the prospect of fighting an even more formidable threat than Bigwig. Unknown to them, Hazel is smaller and weaker than Bigwig and walks with a limp. Hazel probably could not stand up to the general for even a minute, but he is the true leader. But in that moment, Bigwig isn't thinking of any of this. He's just declaring his loyalty, his willingness to sacrifice everything for the person he follows. I want to return to the question that we started with. What makes a man strong? Ralph Waldo Emerson was a 19th century American philosopher, essayist, and one of the guiding lights of the Transcendentalist movement, and he had some interesting thoughts on the matter which he explored in his 1941 essay, Self-Reliance. The self-reliance that he was thinking of was more than being financially or emotionally independent, though. Emerson suggested that, among other things, a man's strength was the measure of his ability to follow his own judgments on all things, to refuse accepted wisdom and the opinions of others, to allow no one else to determine for you what was good or evil, noble or ignoble, to conform to no one and nothing. To Emerson, every man was a sovereign, a king, not of lands or peoples, but of his own thoughts and judgments. To quote, "Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. Society is a joint stock company in which the members agree, for the better securing of his bread to each shareholder, to surrender the liberty and culture of the eater. The virtue in most request is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist." In essence, Emerson's essay was a declaration of a kind of individualism that was so radical that even today people have to kind of sanitize him in order to present him to modern audiences. There's an especially spicy commentary on abolitionists that to this very day produces ample amounts of cope, but I'll leave that for another time. I first read Emerson when I was a teenager, and at that time, I found his ideas intoxicating. But back then it was a little harder to see some of the negative consequences of Emerson's perspective. For one, this kind of only God can judge me attitude doesn't look so good when it gets extrapolated to absolutely everyone. Instead, what it looks like is what is colloquially referred to as main character syndrome. People acting like entitled assholes because they don't care about anyone else's opinion. I don't imagine that Ralph thought his words would eventually end up running cover for cynical, cancerous kickstreamers who make money by spitting on social norms and standards of decency.
Alright guys, I just totaled my McLaren. It is completely cooked right now. I don't know what to do. Look, all the parts are right here.
Although I'm also not sure what he'd be able to say against it. Aren't these people also being nonconformists, refusing to accept or even concern themselves with surrounding society? But that's probably not the most important issue that I now have with my once hero. Maybe in Emerson's day, conformism was the most salient threat to the health of the human spirit, but I don't think that's even close to true today. Rather, in my view, the much more serious threat is atomization, the state in which individuals are unable to forge meaningful connections to each other. After having secured independence, many of us realize that the price of freedom is isolation and loneliness. And so now I find myself resonating with art and stories that can show us something else. Moments like Bigwig's heroic declaration of purpose in Watership Down. I always get the same vibes from Boromir's "my brother, my captain, my king" line at the end of the first Lord of the Rings film.
I would have followed you, my brother. My captain. My king.
Earlier in the same film, Boromir is wandering around Rivendell and he comes across a hall containing the broken shards of the sword Narsil, the sword that cut the ring from Sauron's finger and which signifies the bloodline of Isildur and Elendil before him, the kings of Gondor. And Boromir initially holds the sword with obvious reverence. he forgets himself for a moment and is held in awe of this symbol of some bygone majesty before returning to his senses. He puts it down so clumsily that it falls from the table, and after hesitating for a moment, Boromir walks away, leaving it on the ground, symbolically turning his back on his allegiances to the once king. Later, when the race is gathered to discuss what is to be done with the One Ring, Legolas reveals Aragorn's true identity, rightful heir to the throne of Gondor and Boromir's king, but Boromir refuses to recognize his authority.
Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king.
Boromir's character arc is to become capable of being led, of recognizing legitimate authority, and the bittersweetness of his ending is that he finally recognizes Aragorn's worthiness and pledges his service to him, but only at the moment when his ability to serve is all but gone. To me, scenes like these show what is possible when men trust each other, even with their lives. I won't spoil any more of the story. If you haven't read the book or seen the movie, I recommend both because both have certain strengths over the other. The book becomes occasionally a little sufferable with its descriptions of landscapes and flora. Richard Adams clearly held a deep love for the English countryside. All of the places that he describes in the novel are real locations in Hampshire, England, and that's cool, but come on, man, give me a break. And there are some pretty consistent deviations from the A-plot whenever the rabbits tell stories of their ancestral folk hero, Elafra. You can't get mad at me for messing up this name. But these are pretty interesting, and there is a very nice payoff for them at the end. The characters are also more fully realized and engaging, and that's a real treat for anybody who watches the movie first. Always watch the movie first, guys. That is day one stuff. Speaking of, the film is badly animated and sort of nuts in places, but undeniably charming. The voice acting generally has a pretty subdued and natural quality to it that I find extremely refreshing.
There's a bad danger coming. That's not good.
I haven't seen the more recent Netflix adaptation, but my gut says to avoid it. And also, here's someone else confirming what my gut told me, and for reasons that my gut would probably agree with. Anyway, having recently read the book, I can comfortably say that Bigwig is my favorite character.
Come on and try, you crack-brained slave driver.
And not in the sense that I identify with him most strongly and so I favor him. I'm no Bigwig or Hazel either. But what I love about this book is how it makes way for so many imaginable types, each with their own unique gifts and weaknesses. Bigwig is strong and capable, and he's not stupid, but he does have a tendency to fly off the handle here and there in ways that get them into trouble. Both Blackberry and Fiver are intelligent, but in different ways. Blackberry is more of an analytical intellect and Fiver is more intuitive, but they both have obvious respect for each other and they frequently work together and consult each other. Paradoxically, this appreciation for each of their individual talents appears to be wrapped up in Hazel's leadership, suggesting that it is only when directed towards some higher end that our individual gifts can truly come into focus as things worthy of appreciation. Ultimately, it's Bigwig's ability to accept leadership that allows him to make the most of his strength, to be a hero at the moment when it is most needed. And contrawise, it is Boromir's failure to fully accept leadership that causes him to attempt to steal the ring from Frodo, the event which directly leads to the splitting of the Fellowship, even if he does his best to make up for this error. Amid all our talk about rights and individuality and liberty, the idea of sublimating one's own will to someone else's, of being a follower, is often treated as if it were a sign of some type of moral failure or defect of personality. In the same way that I did as a teen, as a society, we have gotten drunk on the spirit of Emerson's Self-Reliance, whether any particular person has read it or not. And the consequences are basically that social cohesion has collapsed, moral standards have degraded beyond recognition, collective action has become much more difficult, and outcomes are in general worse for everyone. We have lost the ability to understand the good. One of my favorite lines of poetry comes from W.H. Auden, and it goes like this: "All failures have one good result. They prove the good is difficult." I realized a long time ago that to really love the good, you have to be able to recognize when you don't have it, to be able to admit when you have failed. This is hard on the ego, and as a result, it is something that fewer and fewer people can do. How much harder is it then to pledge oneself to a leader in the same way that these characters did? It's only possible when someone truly cares about something enough to recognize that achieving it is more important than his vanity or independence, and frequently, our arrogance prevents us from that realization. But that arrogance is only possible in the atomized, consumerist, ego-insane nerf world of modernity, one which may be coming to a rapid end. And I also think that as the arrogance and narcissism of youth fades, as we begin to realize that we were never kings, and that the ego is a tree that bears less fruit the more you tend to it, there is some part of the soul that begins to long for something like a king. In my own life, I've experienced many bosses, most of them of varying degrees of pettiness and incompetence, but precious few captains or kings. And it's in moments like these mentioned that I feel that absence most acutely. And for just an instant, in Bigwig's response to Woundwort or Boromir's last words to Aragorn, you can glimpse an alternative. I won't deny that there is a kind of magic in Emerson's hymn of individualism, but there is an even stronger magic in moments like these. And it's my belief that if there is a human future worth having, a debatable question in itself if you've been keeping up with the world, then it belongs to those who can harness this magic. Brothers, captains, and kings. Contrawise, it is Boromir's failure to fully. Fuck me, this guy's fucking name.